Welcome back. Now, sir, you've been vocal in criticizing the late Chinua Achebe's account of the Nigerian Civil War in his book, There Was a Country. Can you tell me specifically what was it he said that you disagreed with?
First of all, after a civil war, you want to make sure you don't lose more lives. You want to make sure you don't prepare people to fight another war. What I could not take about the book is that it used a wrong analysis of Igbo history and of Nigeria's history to try to explain why we had a war. I can explain it very simply. Nigeria was a country which Britain forced into a situation where there would always be competition. It was a very deliberate strategy for Lugard not to allow the huge knot to be broken up and to have broken up the smaller Southern Protectorate. It was a strategy of colonial domination, which many Nigerians knew about but simply responded to only in vague terms.
In what way did the late Achebe's narrative differ from what you're saying?
That's what I'm coming to. When independence was on the way, each ethnic group had to decide how to go about it. And the dominant ethnic group formed their own political parties and ramped all the minority groups into their fold. But if you had to take over power at the government, at the center, you needed to form a coalition with one group. If the East and the West needed to control that government, they had to form a coalition. If the North wished to control the central government, it had to form a coalition. What kind of coalition do you need to form? In 1959, the coalition that the NCNC opted for was one which said, if you form a coalition with the Western region, you will be competing with people who already have enough people to fill all the jobs. And so it will be a competition between two very vibrant economic units with educated people who would never agree because of the competition between them. So it was better for the NCNC to form a coalition with the NPC because at that time, the North, as the colonial people designed it, had not produced enough educated people to fill the quota that was reserved for the North. So it was actually possible at independence for the NCNC's constituency, which was predominantly in the East, to take over most of the jobs. They did take over virtually every job. Chinua Achebe talks about it so glowingly, as if it was a great thing. It wasn't a great thing.
Well, if they had the capacity and the North didn't have the capacity, someone had to do the job.
Fine.
So there's nothing wrong with it. Should he feel guilty about that?
I like that answer. It sounds very objective to start with, but this is the way it worked. If the NCNC and the NPC formed a coalition, it meant that they were excluding a region. And the exclusion of that region meant that there would be a consistently dissentient party inside the Nigerian fold. But this is the way it worked out. Whereas the NCNC took over all the jobs, virtually, and it was possible for an Achebe just fresh from the university to be made a big man in external broadcasting, made the big man in external broadcasting. Very many of the things on the ground that determined how jobs are created were taken over by the North. I'll point them out for you. All the railway extensions were in the North. All the military installations were in the North. The Kanji Dam for electricity was in the North. And when the iron and steel industry came, which had already been slated to go to the East, near Onitsha, an international consultancy was set up by the federal government under Tafawa Balewa, and a report came out which said it should still go to the North. It was at that point that that election took place in 1964. And Nnamdi Azikiwe refused to invite Tafawa Balewa to form a government because, according to him, they rigged the election. There is nothing in the Nigerian books which says that if the Governor General or President can refuse to call the Prime Minister to form a government. Nothing. So that was a constitutional crisis bred by this economic struggle between the regions. Many people refuse to see it as an economic struggle, but if you don't do so, you are misreading Nigeria's history, because there is another way in which solutions could have been found, and that solution was the one I stated at the very beginning. Every Nigerian will go to school, every Nigerian will get a job, And when they are old, they will have old age pensions. We have enough resources in Nigeria to make it possible.
Now, my maths is very bad. However, I think you were probably a teenager during the Nigerian Civil War. Mr. Achebe,
I was a newspaper reporter.
At how old?
I was 18 years old when I became a reporter in the Midwest Echo in Benin.
Mr. Achebe lived the war.
No,
not just lived the war, was part and parcel of the war. So why is your narrative why is your narrative and your explanation of the war more valid than his own? Because it's about perspective, isn't it?
One very simple example. Chinua Achebe in that book twice states that that Ironsi came to power in May of 1966. He said it twice in that book. And I will tell you what it enabled him to do. Because the carelessness of the editing of that book is a separate picture.
It was probably just a mistake. That, typographical error.
Yes, if it was a mistake, it enabled him to say something that you need to know. It enabled him to say, therefore, that the pogrom against the Igbos did not have anything to do with the Igbo leadership of the country. But it had. The truth is that by May, when the first skirmishes began, Ironsi had been in power for so many months and had been part of the group that should have ensured that there was no pogrom. How else do you deal with a crisis in a country if the leader of the country against whom people were responding is said to have come to power after the real crisis began? You might say it is typographical error. I argue that because of that typographical error, he was able to build arguments on it which refused to explain to us why the pogrom took place.
Now, when there's been a war, like the sort that we had in Nigeria, there are bound to be many, many, many narratives. Often it is said that it is victors who write history. People who are defeated.
Nigeria, the non-victors are the ones who have written the history. That's the most interesting part. All the books on the Civil War are written by people in the East who were genuinely interested in building a Nigeria, but who, when they got to Biafra, discovered that there appeared to be a hatred of the Igbos based on so many things. I have just told you, it had nothing to do with such hatred. It was a struggle for economic advantage, which could have been resolved by leaders who are far-sighted, seeing that it is not only about solving the problem for the Igbo or the Hausa or the Yoruba, but ensuring that a common playing ground is created, which makes it possible for all of them to build a country.
Is it important that the Nigeria of today is able to hear and listen to these many narratives?
When you call them many narratives, you frighten me as somebody who is interested in history. I mean, there is the author who says, we remember differently.
Yes, we do.
Listen, we may remember this differently. It doesn't change certain facts. And those facts in the Nigerian situation are so hard that you can't beat them. Is it true or is it not true that the NCNC actually published a position in 1964 which said we gave them an opportunity to take over this, and this, as I named them? The Kanji Dam, the military installations, the iron and steel industry, and the railway extensions. Look, as you put all of them together, you begin to see a nation tilted to one side. Even if all the Igbos have occupied every job in Nigeria, they were second-hand citizens, second-class citizens, and there was no way they could have avoided it. Now, when a country is being built on that basis, and somebody tells you we see it differently, it depends on what you mean by seeing it differently. Yes, some people have power and have resources and say, we must always control. And when an attempt is made to reduce their capacity to control, it becomes a matter of seeing things differently. The average Igbo man who does not want to be blamed for going to a wrong war starts by saying, we see differently. Ojukwu did not have to go to war. When a man has 15 children and 2 of them are dead, he does not sacrifice all the others in order to plead for the 2 who died. Now, what Ojukwu needed to do was so plain, and every soldier in Biafra who was properly trained in the military school told him that what we needed to do was different. Ojukwu, who was the head of the army, that is to say, those who were properly trained soldiers, knew that it was not a war to be fought on the basis that Ojukwu wanted.
Now, you know, the reason why your critics have a problem with this narrative is that essentially you're seeking to blame the people who were killed for the civil war.
I'm actually saying that it is wrong. I'm actually saying that it is wrong to kill your own children. Let me give you an example. Some people will tell us 2,000 children were dying per day. Now, a military leader has to decide.
Does the Nigerian state have any responsibility for the Nigerian civil war?
Please, wait a minute. Who is the Nigerian state? The Nigerian state was in Lagos, in Biafra, and every one of the regions. Don't make it look like a federal issue. It was an issue that every region in Nigeria at that time was a party to. The party that played best, if you want to know, actually came from the Midwest. They were the ones who insisted that Nigeria must remain one country. And that was how the Easterners who had wanted confederation, the Northerners who wanted confederation, and the Yoruba who said confederation for only 3 years because confederation is not good, all of them then came round to the idea of one Nigeria. When you listen to people who tell you that we remember differently, there are different ways of narrating a country's history. No, the man who shot who is very well known in Nigeria. Why did we not arrest those who killed and try them and sentence them the way it should be done? So this is the way Nigeria does justice. In the case of the pogrom, you will hear a generalized picture of how the Northerners organized to destroy the Easterners. There are people who organized the pogrom. They are identifiable. I identify them in the writings I have done. You can tell who went to who to decide how such and such a person should be brought in to commit the pogrom. The pogrom was committed by Northerners who were pro-Igbo. And when I say pro-Igbo,
say that again.
The pogrom was organized by Northerners who were pro-Igbo.
What was the purpose of that?
Let me tell you the story. Usman Katsina was governor. A permanent secretary under him organized the permanent secretaries in Kaduna, and they agreed that a new leadership order needed to be made for the North. He was the one sent to meet Maitama Sule. It is in Maitama Sule's biography. I did not write it for him. He was the one who was sent to meet Maitama Sule. Maitama Sule told them, if you are looking for a response to the coup and the rest of it, I'm not the one to talk to. I'm NPC. At this point in time, all NPCs are under watch. So go and meet Aminu Kano. He's the only one who can do it. When he took the man to, I'm deleting things so that when I want to come back to it, I can use it.
Don't delete anything.
He was the one who went to Aminu Kano with the emissary and told Aminu Kano what job he needed to do. Aminu Kano was the one who went around the North with his NEPO supporters to commiserate with the people who lost people in the first coup. That commiseration visit, the commiseration visits that he made, laid the basis for the pogrom. Look, I'm saying...
So it wasn't a commiseration visit. He went to incite people, other words. That's what you're saying.
That is precisely what happened. I am saying, read the biography of Maitama Sule, read the biography of Aminu Kano, read the biography of Tanko Yakasai. They have written it. It is not about seeing Nigeria differently. The real hard information is available in print, written by the people who participated.
What are the lessons of the Civil War for Nigeria today?
That we should never think of splitting this country and should only imagine how we get a larger sense of Africa that can stand up to the rest of the world.
Outside the factual narratives about the Civil War, we've also, of course, got the fictional narratives, people who write about the Civil War, but, you know, in the form of storytelling. And the most famous book, of course, and the most successful so far has been Chimamanda's Half of a Yellow Sun. What did you make of that book?
I liked the book. I liked the book because for the first time you found an Igbo author who was not afraid to look Ojukwu in the face and say you murdered your people. Unfortunately, thereafter, Chimamanda has been fighting so hard to be the Igbo girl. It's unnecessary.
Why do you say that? What is she doing?
Because in responding to Achebe's book, she would not go as far as she went in the book. Because when you read the book, you actually see this young man playing at revolutionary, who is leading his people astray because a beleaguered people need a savior.
Maybe she just has respect for her elders.
She what?
I said maybe she just has respect for her elders and
No.
doesn't feel she should take on Achebe. No, I'm talking about, you said her response to Achebe's subsequent book.
Respect for an elder when you are dealing with the fate of your country. Elders are unimportant. The country is the important issue. There is no question about it. When you are confronted by an elder who has done wrong, and you know that if we live by the code of that wrongness, your country will be in trouble, go against that elder and save your country. We need to have a sense of shame to know that if you killed your brother, you are not a complete human being. You are a damaged person.
We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we speak a little bit more about the trajectory of literature in Nigeria today. Don't go away.